Welcome to Heartline Stories. Today's story follows a millionaire whose perfect wedding turns into a whirlwind of shock and confusion. When his ex-fiancée shows up with a boy identical to him, everything he thought he knew about his past is thrown into question. What is the truth behind this mystery? Stay tuned as things unfold in ways no one expects. Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. John Parker was a successful millionaire who owned several businesses and lived a life many people dreamed of. He had it all: money, fame, and a perfect home in the heart of the city. However, there was one thing missing in his life: love. Years ago, John had been in love with a woman named Maria. She was kind, loving, and the two had a magical connection. But life had other plans. They eventually broke up when Maria moved back to the Philippines to take care of her family. John had always wondered what happened to her, but time had passed and he had moved on. John was about to marry another woman, Lisa, who was beautiful, elegant, and loved the high society life. The wedding was set for next month and everything was arranged, from the venue to the dress and the guests. But one thing John hadn't anticipated was a letter that arrived one afternoon. It was from Maria, his ex-girlfriend. The letter said, "Dear John, I hope life has been good to you. I wanted to reach out to let you know that I'll be in town soon, and I would love to catch up. I understand if you are busy, but I hope we can meet. Warmly, Maria." John hesitated for a moment. He hadn't heard from Maria in years. A part of him still cared for her, and he couldn't ignore the memories of their time together. Without thinking much, he decided to invite her to his wedding. After all, they had shared so much in the past, and it would be nice to see her again. He sent a reply saying, "Maria, I would be honored to have you at my wedding. It's been a long time, and I'd love to catch up. See you soon, John." The day of the wedding arrived, and John was both excited and nervous. He couldn't wait to marry Lisa, but there was a part of him that was curious to see Maria again. The venue was stunning, filled with flowers, chandeliers, and guests dressed to impress. Everything was perfect, except for the small, nervous flutter in John's chest as he awaited Maria's arrival. As the guests started filling the seats, John stood by the altar, waiting for Lisa to walk down the aisle. But then the door swung open, and there she was, Maria. John's heart skipped a beat. She looked just as beautiful as the day they had parted ways. Her long, dark hair flowed down her back, and her dress was elegant but simple. But what caught John's attention even more was the little boy holding her hand. The boy looked no older than 7 or 8. He had curly hair and a bright smile, and he was wearing a tiny suit that made him look like a miniature version of John himself. John stared, unable to believe his eyes. The boy looked exactly like him. His heart raced. Maria spotted John in the crowd and made her way over to him. As she got closer, she smiled warmly. "John," she said softly, "it's been so long." John was still in shock, his eyes fixed on the boy. "Maria, is this—" He couldn't finish his sentence. Maria followed his gaze and laughed gently. "Yes, this is Alex," she said, holding the boy's hand tighter. "He's your son, John." John's mind went blank. "My son?" he whispered. Maria nodded. "I never meant to keep him from you. When I moved back to the Philippines, I was scared. It wasn't an easy time, and I wanted to protect him. But now, seeing you again, I knew it was time for you to meet him." John was overwhelmed. He had no idea he had a son. How could he have missed all of this? Maria had never told him, and he had never asked. He felt a wave of emotions: shock, confusion, guilt, and a strange sense of joy at the thought of having a son. Alex, sensing the tension, tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, is he my daddy?" Maria looked down at her son and then at John. She smiled softly, her eyes filled with emotion. "Yes, Alex, this is your daddy." John knelt down, looking into the boy's eyes. He couldn't believe it. The child that stood before him was his flesh and blood, a part of him he never knew existed. "Alex," John said softly, his voice shaky, "I'm your daddy." The words felt strange but beautiful. The boy smiled up at him. "Hi, Daddy. I'm happy to meet you." John stood up, still in shock. "Maria, why didn't you tell me?" Maria sighed. "I wanted to, John. I really did. But after everything that happened, I thought it was best to stay away. I didn't want to complicate things for you or for him." John was torn. His wedding was right in front of him, yet he couldn't take his eyes off Maria and Alex. The moment felt like a whirlwind, and he didn't know how to process everything. Lisa, who had been standing at the back of the room, watched the scene unfold. Her expression was one of disbelief and confusion. The smile that had once been on her face now vanished, replaced by shock. She walked slowly toward John, her eyes scanning the boy and then Maria. "John, what is going on here?" Lisa asked, her voice tight. John didn't know how to answer. His world had just turned upside down. How could he explain this to Lisa? To everyone? He had no idea what to do next. Maria placed a hand on his shoulder gently. "I never wanted to hurt you, John. I just wanted to protect him, and I think he deserves to know you." John took a deep breath, looking between Maria, Alex, and Lisa. "I need a moment," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need to think." As John walked away from the altar, his mind raced. Everything he had planned for the day had just changed. What was he supposed to do now? He had a son, but his life had already been arranged with Lisa. What would happen to his marriage? Would he be able to find a way to make things right? The wedding was on the brink of falling apart, and John had no idea where to go from here. John walked out into the garden trying to clear his head. The sun was setting, casting a soft orange glow across the wedding venue. He could hear the sound of guests murmuring in the distance, no doubt whispering about the scene that had just unfolded. His heart raced and his thoughts were a jumbled mess. He couldn't believe what Maria had just revealed. A son. His son. The boy Alex was his, and yet John felt like he was in a fog. How had he not known? Why hadn't Maria told him sooner? "John?" a voice called behind him. John turned around to see Lisa standing at the door of the garden. Her face was pale, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "What's going on? Who is that boy?" she asked, her voice shaky. John's heart sank. He didn't want to hurt Lisa, but the truth was, he didn't know what to say. He had always thought of himself as a man of control, someone who had everything planned out. But now it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under him. "Lisa, I—" He stopped, unsure of how to explain the situation. "That boy, Alex, is my son." Lisa's face turned white. She took a step back, as if the words were too much for her to process. "Your son," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how? When? Why didn't you tell me about this?" John ran a hand through his hair, trying to collect his thoughts. "I didn't know, Lisa. I had no idea. Maria and I—" He hesitated, not sure how much to share with Lisa, especially in the middle of their wedding. "We had a past, but she left, and we lost touch. She came back today, and she brought Alex with her. He's my son, Lisa." The silence stretched between them. Lisa stood there staring at him, her face a mixture of confusion, hurt, and disbelief. "So you're telling me that you've been keeping a secret all this time?" Lisa finally spoke, her voice trembling. "You didn't think to tell me that you had a child? That this could happen?" John's stomach tightened. He knew he had messed up. "I didn't know, Lisa. If I had known, I would have told you. But right now, I need to figure this out. I need to understand what's going on." Lisa looked away, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know if I can handle this, John. You should have told me before all of this. Before the wedding. Before we even got to this point." John reached out to her, but she stepped back. "I just need time," she whispered, turning and walking away from him, disappearing into the crowd. John watched her go, his heart heavy. He knew this wasn't how things were supposed to go. His wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, but now everything felt uncertain and broken. He turned back toward Maria and Alex, who were now sitting quietly near a bench by the garden fountain. Alex looked up at him with innocent eyes, still not fully understanding what had just happened. Maria, on the other hand, seemed calm but nervous, watching John closely. John took a deep breath and walked over to them, his heart racing. "Maria, I'm sorry," he said, his voice tight. "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect any of this. But I need to know more. I need to know how we got here." Maria nodded, her expression softening. "I understand, John. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted you to know, but I wasn't sure when the right time was. I didn't want to complicate your life." John looked at Alex, who was still playing with a toy car in his hands. He's my son, Maria. I need to be there for him, but I don't even know where to start. Maria gave him a sad smile. It's not going to be easy, John, but you'll figure it out. I know you will. Just then, John heard footsteps approaching. It was his best man, Tom, who had come to check on him. Tom's face was serious. John, are you all right? Everyone's looking for you. The wedding, it's falling apart. People are talking. John nodded. I know, Tom. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I never expected this. I never expected to find out about Alex like this. Tom frowned. Look, John, you've got to make a choice. You can't have everything. Your past, your future. You've got to figure out what's most important to you. John stood there in silence, staring at the ground. He didn't know what to say. What was he supposed to do? He had a son he never knew about, and now his marriage was on the brink of collapse. Maria placed a hand on his shoulder. Take your time, John. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But you can't ignore what's in front of you anymore. John nodded, but his mind was spinning. He looked over at Lisa's family, who were seated in the reception hall, talking in hushed tones. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. His decisions would affect so many people. But the biggest decision was yet to come. Who would he choose to be in his life? His past with Maria or the future with Lisa? John stood frozen, his mind racing. He had never expected to be faced with such a difficult choice. His heart was torn between the love he had for Lisa, his fiancée, and the shock of learning that he had a son, Alex, with Maria. The sound of the wedding bells echoed through the garden, reminding him that the day was supposed to be about love and celebration, not confusion and regret. The guests were waiting for him, but John felt as though he was trapped in his own thoughts, unsure of what to do next. Tom stood next to him, watching him closely. You need to go inside, John. You can't let this tear you apart. If you love Lisa, you need to talk to her. If you're going to be a father to Alex, you need to step up. You can't run away from this. John took a deep breath. He knew Tom was right. The easy way out would be to walk away, to avoid facing the consequences of his actions. But he couldn't do that. Not anymore. Thanks, Tom, John said quietly, his voice filled with determination. He turned to Maria, who had been silently observing him. I'm going to go inside, talk to Lisa, and try to make things right. I don't know what the future holds, but I can't just let everything fall apart. Maria smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. I'm here for you, John. Whatever you decide, just know that I'll always be there for Alex. John nodded, grateful for her support, though he knew that things would never be the same between them again. He walked back toward the reception hall, his heart heavy with the weight of his decisions. As he entered the room, he could feel the eyes of everyone on him. The guests had stopped talking, the room filled with a tense silence. Lisa was standing near the front, her face pale and full of emotion. John walked up to her, his voice shaky as he spoke. Lisa, I need to talk to you. Lisa looked at him, her eyes searching his face. What is it, John? What's going on? Why didn't you tell me about this? About Alex? John took her hands in his voice filled with regret. I didn't know, Lisa. I had no idea about Alex until today. Maria showed up, and I didn't expect any of this. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how. Lisa's eyes softened, but there was still a hint of hurt in her expression. You kept this from me, John. You kept your past from me. You didn't think I deserved to know? John's throat tightened. I didn't mean to hurt you, Lisa. I wanted to be honest with you, but everything happened so fast. I need to figure out how to be there for Alex, but I also don't want to lose you. There was a long pause before Lisa spoke again. I don't know what to say, John. I love you, but this is so much to take in. I feel like you've been hiding a part of yourself from me. John looked down, ashamed. I know, and I understand if you can't forgive me. I don't expect you to just forget everything, but I need to be there for my son, and I want to be there for you too, if you'll have me. Tears filled Lisa's eyes as she looked at him. I don't know what the future holds, John, but I can't just walk away from you, from what we have. But I need time. I need to understand everything that's happened. John nodded, his heart aching with the uncertainty of it all. Take all the time you need, Lisa. I'll wait for you. As Lisa stepped back, her expression softened, and she placed a gentle hand on his cheek. I'll need to think about all of this, John, but I'm not leaving. I'm here for now. Let's figure this out together. John smiled weakly, feeling a sense of relief that she wasn't walking away. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other, and with time they would find a way through the confusion. Later that night, as the party began to wind down, John sat quietly at a table, reflecting on everything that had happened. Maria and Alex had already left, and Lisa had gone back to their hotel room to gather her thoughts. John knew there were many things still left to resolve, but for the first time that day, he felt a sense of hope. Maybe life wasn't going to be easy, but he was ready to face whatever came next. With Lisa, with Alex, with his past and future all entwined, he had a chance to build something new. The road ahead wouldn't be simple, but it was his road to walk, and he was determined to make things right. As the moon rose high in the sky, John made a silent promise to himself. No matter what, he would fight for his family, his past, his present, and the future they would create together. Thank you for joining us on this Heartline story. Sometimes life's twists leave us questioning everything we thought we knew. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.